Good morning. I'm Jeanette Millin Young, your senator, your voice, your advocate in the 29th legislature, proud of my Virgin Islands heritage. What better time to announce to the world that it is a good thing to be a Virgin Islander? Don't get me wrong. I would never renounce my Puerto Rican heritage. I am of my mother, but as the territory celebrates Virgin Islands History Month, I pause to reflect on the beauty of this territory, its people, and my own heritage. You see, history for me is not about the history books. To the contrary, I live history. This became even more evident to me when I spoke at the Charlotte Amalie High School during its Black History Month series. Before I spoke, I looked around the library where I spoke and noticed the poster boards that featured international women leaders. And then there was the one featuring female political leaders of the U.S. Virgin Islands. There weren't that many of us on the board. Why is that? I venture to say it's partly because we don't encourage and support women to lead. Are we born or trained to lead? For me, I believe that I was predisposed to do so even when I didn't even know it. Remember, I told you I live history. I was born into a family of elected and community leaders. My grandmother, Lucinda Seward Millin, probably didn't have a clue she would grow up to be the first woman elected to the Virgin Islands legislature. Elected in 1954, she distinguished herself in a male-dominated Senate for 10 years. I dare say it couldn't have been an easy feat then, and it still isn't. But respected she was. During her tenure, she fought for the rights of the elderly, earning her the honor of having a home for the elderly named after her. I knew her simply as Granny, but I can only imagine what a great leader she must have been, since even in her sickbed and blind, she continued to lead her family in a most honorable way. My father, Henry Allen Millin, whose many accomplishments include having served as the territory's third elected lieutenant governor, was a dynamic advocate for the business community, having served twice as Chamber of Commerce president and achieving the status of senior vice president of a regional bank. And so now I ask you, do you think it was an accident that I chose to be an advocate for economic development, education, and youth promotion? Indeed, it was years in the making, as is the making of all good leaders. These are some of the reasons that I'm so passionate about ensuring a fair playing field for women and our young people. I want others to have the same opportunities for development that I did. Earlier this week, there was a dispute between the Senate president and the governor regarding our rise in crime statistics. I'm staying far away from their disagreement, but I do take great exception to the governor shifting complete responsibility for the state of crime in the territory to the legislature. He pointed to two pieces of legislation since 2007 that his administration has supported: offering peace status to federal law enforcement officers, and a bill held in committee last week seeking to strengthen anti-street gang laws. Now, I'm asking you to keep in perspective what I'm saying. Since I have been in the Senate, I've never had to vote on these two questions. However, I was present last week as a non-committee member at the Rules Committee meeting and spoke firmly against the street gangs bill. I didn't object to the bill from a desire to protect criminals, but because I believe there are stringent laws already in the books, and an examination of the proposed bill shows me that the proposed changes are not only excessively punitive, but that they can be counterproductive. The way to influence young people away from gangs is not to throw them in prison for wearing a blue or red bandana. Instead, we must concentrate on creating more youth promotion and crime prevention activities. Law enforcement officials confirmed that it costs more to incarcerate our young people than to provide them positive activities. So, if the obvious answer is to keep them from even entering the justice system, why aren't we working harder to steer our young people toward progress and not jail? It is simply disingenuous for the governor to point the finger of blame solely toward the legislature. Personally, I'm not going to stand for passing the buck. For after the buck has been passed, what are we left with? At the same time that the governor is attempting to blame the legislature for inaction on the issue of crime, two bills that I have sponsored, one to revive the VI Commission on Youth and the other to create a crime and public health task force, are currently making their way through the legislative process. As such, I can only assume that the governor, in his zeal to address crime, will be in enthusiastic support of my legislation, and I look forward to hearing supportive testimony from members of his administration next week when Bill number 29-0198 is heard before the Committee on Public Safety. I don't want to hear there's no money. We have to be committed to identifying the funds at the appropriate time. If you're interested in finding out more about this legislation and others, call me at 693-3521. I'm Jeanette Millin Young, your senator, your voice, your advocate in the 29th legislature.